So the reel that you see here is the Histar Aurora Air bait finesse reel. It came out a little over a year ago, and at the time it pushed bait finesse numbers to its absolute limits when it came to on-paper specs. It was the lightest by far, had the lightest and smallest spool, and its physical size was also the smallest and most comfortable. Now the negatives, at least for my reel, were its sloppy handle tolerances, which had both in and out play as well as side to side seesaw-like play in the handle. And I will say it didn't impress me very much when I took it out casting either, but I recently took the Aurora Air down to Florida for some light saltwater fishing, and it actually performed great and had zero problems battling a couple of decently sized speckled trout. All this for a budget price at the time of somewhere around $70. Well, in typical Chinese fashion, the Aurora Air was quickly surpassed by three reels: the GU Year of the Dragon Edition, the GU 99 Carbon, and this reel, the original GU 99. And the number 99 in its name is important because that's what it's supposed to weigh in grams. And just for context, the current bait finesse king Shimano ALDEBARAN BFS weighs over 130 grams. Now, just in case you haven't figured it out, these three reels are based on the Aurora Air. Now, out of these three reels, I chose the original GU 99 over the Year of the Dragon edition because of the bright silver color with orange accents. And the 99 Carbon edition came out a few months after, and I would have picked that one over the Year of the Dragon version as well. Now, before we get into this reel review, let me show you the really classic box that it came in. It's definitely in the top 3 nicest boxes I've ever handled, and definitely much better than anything coming out of Japan, or America for that matter. So now I'm gonna let you guys take an all-around look at the GU 99, and compared to the Aurora Air that it's based off of, I think it looks much better. The all bright silver paint really lets you see just how good looking that this platform is, and there's just the right amount of orange splashed in for contrast. Now the components are pretty much the same as the Aurora Air, like the spool tension knob, which doesn't click, the thumb bar, and the trim piece that is on the crank side plate. But the GU 99 does have an entirely new handle and knob assembly that looks much better and high end. The carbon fiber handle is much more skeletonized, and let's talk about these sculpted finesse knobs. Now, when I first saw them online, I thought they were aluminum. Well, they aren't. They're plastic, but pretty sure that the orange end cap inserts are aluminum, and they look great considering this is supposed to be a budget reel. Now the big question is, did Histar improve the sloppy handle tolerances that the Aurora Air had? And the answer is mostly. Now the side-to-side rocking slop is still there, but it's not as pronounced, and despite having hard plastic knobs versus rubber on the Aurora Air, I am glad to say that my GU 99 is smoother when cranking the handle. Now don't get it twisted, this is still a budget Chinese BFS reel, so when it comes to its refinement and smoothness, it's perfectly acceptable for its price point. And yes, the GU 99 does have a clicking drag. But I will say that it is very unrefined. It kind of reminds me of the original Fishband Clamber Hypermicro, where the clicks are very large and they somewhat tend to shake the reel. So now it's time to see if the GU 99 can live up to its namesake and weigh in at 99 grams. Now the original Aurora Air came in at an unbelievable 4 ounces, easily beating the KASTKING Kestrel Elite by almost half an ounce. So let's see what the 99 really weighs. Well, it looks like they missed their mark. by a couple of grams. And I will say that on AliExpress, they actually covered themselves by letting buyers know that the actual weight can vary by plus or minus 2 grams. So what does 99 grams weigh in ounces? As you can see, it is a mind-blowing light 3.6. That is almost half an ounce lighter than the Aurora Air and a full ounce lighter than Shimano's ALDEBARAN BFS. And you can actually feel it when picking up one reel after the other. So my question is, how much lighter can these reels actually get before they start to compromise strength? Maybe we'll be seeing some brand new material technology in the future that will make the reels even lighter, yet stronger at the same time. We'll just have to wait and see. So we saw that the GU99 has set a new standard in lightness. Now it's time to see if they can do the same in spool weight, which of course is extremely important when it comes to BFS and trying to cast the really ultralight lures. Now when comparing the 99 spool versus the Aurora, they are the same dimensions. Both are a tiny 27.9 millimeters in diameter and quite shallow, but believe it or not, I can actually feel the 99 spool is a little bit lighter, and they achieved this with what they call a PAMS spool. Now I think PAMS is a copy of Shimano's S3D technology, where the spool machining is so precise that they can make the spool walls thinner without sacrificing strength, and also decrease weight without having to resort to drilling portholes. And I can really feel it when rubbing my thumb on the edges of both spools. The 99 spool feels thinner and sharper. So what does the scale say? Well, first let's weigh the Aurora spool. And it comes in at an incredibly light 4.3 grams with its spool bearing. Now without the spool bearing, it comes in at 3.4 grams. Now on AliExpress, Histar does claim the 99 spool weighs only 3.2 grams. And I'm assuming that's without its spool bearing, but let's see what's what. Boom! 3.4 grams with its spool bearing. That is unreal. We're talking a spool that's just as light as the Aurora Air spool without its bearing. So of course, I'm going to take off that spool bearing and we're going to see the true weight. So the spool bearing is off and pow, you are seeing that correctly. Only 2.85 grams of rotational mass for the GU99 spool. Now that is unreal, especially when you realize they haven't drilled a single porthole in it. So this spool could actually be lighter if Histar wanted it to be. So not only is China pushing the limits of how light a reel can be, but they're really pushing the limits of how light a spool can be as well. Oh, and just to let you guys know, they upgraded the spool bearing to a micro bearing that's housed in an aluminum case. Now there was significant grease on the bearing and the spool shaft that I had to wipe off, and hope that doesn't slow the spool bearing down. So I'm going to briefly touch on the 99's sophisticated dynamic magnetic brake system, but for a more in-depth analysis, check out my unboxing video on the Aurora Air, where I did a deep dive into it. Now the name of this system is called the 3D Dynamic Suspension System, and how it works is there are 3 little banks of 2 magnets spread evenly around this brake hub, and each of these magnet banks is spring-loaded so that they move closer to the spool during the cast when the spool is spinning its fastest, and they're supposed to retract as the spool slows down, at least in theory. Now what's really cool about this system is that you can actually lock each individual magnet bank down if you want, so that they don't move during the cast by turning this plate that has the numbers 0 to 4 printed on it. So there's 4 levels of adjustment where you can have 0 magnet banks pop out, 1 magnet bank pop out, 2 pop out, or all 3 if you want. So it's very adjustable, and on paper it's actually more sophisticated than even Shimano's mighty FTB system. And that's not the only adjustment. This entire brake assembly moves in and out by using the external dial on the side plate. So the level of adjustability on this system is truly next level. pretty incredible for a budget entry-level BFS reel. So when I casted the Aurora Air for the first time, I was really unimpressed. The reel felt really overbraked, and the casting distance was poor despite me shutting down all the pop-up magnets. So of course I did a little impromptu brake test on the 99 by spinning the spool in the highest and lowest brake setting on the external dial. And while of course this test really doesn't tell us much, there seems to be a pretty good difference between the highest and low brake setting when it comes to spool spin time. Okay, so to finish off this video, it's time to get into a controversial topic, and that's the current price of the GU99. Now a lot of you may laugh, but I bought this reel on November 11 of last year. Yes, it's been sitting on the table waiting for this video for almost half a year, but better late than never. So at the time of my purchase, the infamous AliExpress 11/11 sale was going on, so I got this reel for a super low $53. So the question is, what is the price today with all the tariff wars going on? And it looks like it's around at least $100 if you can find one. Also, if you can get it shipped to you if you live in the United States. Now, I haven't purchased anything from AliExpress in a long time, at least a few months, so I'm not sure if you would pay any kind of extra fees once the reel actually gets to the US, but it's currently telling me that I can't buy another one, and I don't know if that's an issue with the current trade war, or it may be that the reel is discontinued, having been replaced by the current 99 Carbon Edition. So if you see this reel in this bright silver color on AliExpress and you want it, I would pick one up ASAP. It is still a little bit rough around the edges in some areas, but even for $100, I think this reel, at least so far, seems worth it because of its incredibly high specs and potential. Alright guys, thanks a lot.